It sounds like a snake. Go ahead and try. No, no, I'm not telling lies. It's the sound of the day. I'll teach you the rules. Uh-oh, I'm talking about the S sound. Hello, everybody. Okay, so if you were just tuning into my other video, I got cut off, so I decided to just start over, and it worked out even better because I didn't mess up the lyrics this time of my little song. We are talking about the sound today, or the snake sound. So that's why I came up with using Paul Abdul's Cold Hearted Snake as my little song to pair it with today. So the sound, like I said, is called the snake sound in my Nonverbal No More system, and it is the first sound in a new set of sounds. Now we're entering into the later developing consonant sounds. So the first 7 videos that I've put out have focused on the early developing consonant sounds, and now we're moving into the later developing consonant sounds. And these are sounds that typically your child is getting pretty good at that set of early developing consonant sounds. And now they're starting to be able to say more difficult sounds. And the snake sound happens to be one of those difficult sounds. And I decided to just go ahead and tackle it first because it really can be a challenging sound for so many kids. There pretty much isn't a kid that comes across my caseload that has some difficulty with articulation that we don't need to target the sound on some level. So let me just go ahead and start off by showing you how to cue the sound. So we start with our index finger and our thumb, because we're only going to use one finger because is a voiceless sound. If you put your hand on your throat, you'll be able to tell that there's no vibration when we say s. It's voiceless, so we're just going to use the one index finger, and we put it at the corners of our mouths with a nice big smiley face and go s. And I'm going to try to so you can see. So I move my hand away and I bring the fingers together. And that is indicating to your child that there needs to be it's a long sound. There needs to be a continuation of airflow that occurs. So in Nonverbal No More, I teach my parents there's different categories of sounds. And one of the categories of sounds is long sounds versus short sounds. So the sounds that we did last week, t and d, those would be short sounds. But sounds like and s, they're long sounds because we can prolong them with our exhalation. So we cue it like this. S, s, s. So I'm just doing this so that you can really get a good view of what my hand is doing. And S actually does have a sound buddy. It's the Z sound or the Z sound. But Z is, I have categorized into the next set of sounds, which are the advanced consonant sounds. So Z is actually even harder than the group of sounds that we're talking about right now in the later developing consonant sounds. So even though it is the sound buddy with S, I actually put it into the advanced consonant sounds because I don't really target Z with my kids in my therapy room until much later along in the process. But S is one of those sounds that we can usually teach our child to say once they've started to master some of those early developing consonant sounds. Now, the next thing I want to tell you about the sound or the snake sound is that there is a difference. You want to be mindful of the fact that S often will not just show up by itself in words. It will often be in an S blend, like in the word spoon or school or stop. And it can even appear in an S blend at the end of the word, like last. So if your child is just starting to learn how to say this sound and is just starting to really gain control of their ability to say these speech sounds, you want to kind of steer clear of those words that have the S blends. Or if you want your child to be able to say one of those words, just drop off the other consonant sound and just cue it with the S. It'll be as we move along and your child gets better able at coordinating their mouth to produce the speech sounds, you can add the second consonant sound in. But if they're just learning how to really blend sounds together, so for the word spoon, actually, I'm sorry, for the word spoon, what you would actually do is just drop off the S and say poon, poon. So I'm sorry, I said that wrong. So with the S blends, you're gonna just get rid of the S and say the word, cue the word for your child without the S on it. So that's how you're gonna handle those S blends. I apologize, that was my mistake. I got a little confused there. But when S is by itself in a word, we just cue it like this. And interestingly enough, S is one of the few sounds that when it develops in typical speech, it's easier for kids to say it at the end of the word than it is in the beginning of the word at first. So you might even want to target words that have the sound at the end of the word first, like bus. For some reason, it's just easier for your child to say the S sound at the end of the words, when typically we would target a sound in the beginning of the word first. So that's just another fun thing to keep in mind. Now, if you have a child that is able to say S, but they tend to stick their tongue between their teeth when they say the S sound, so that's what we call an interdental. Some people call it a lisp. We in the speech world call it an interdental production because it's between the teeth, interdental. And so the tongue kind of goes like that. So what I like to do to cue the kids, and this works actually pretty well a lot of the time, is I tell my students, my tongue is a snake and my teeth are a cage, and I don't like snakes. So we have to keep your snake in its cage. So let me see you close your cage and say sss. So if your child is having a hard time keeping their tongue back in their mouth when they say their S sound, that's a good way that you can cue them to say their S with their tongue back in their mouth. Oh, keep your snake in its cage. Close your cage, then let me hear your snake. Oh no, you let your snake out of your cage. But be careful if you act too silly with saying that they let their snake out of the cage. They might actually enjoy that, and it might actually reinforce them to not keep their tongue behind their teeth. I've made that mistake. I speak from experience. So tell them to keep their snake in its cage. Now S, just like t, d, and n, the last couple of sounds that we've talked about, is produced at that alveolar ridge, which you didn't see the N video. We talked about that hard ridge right behind your upper teeth, right before the roof of your mouth goes up. That's called the alveolar ridge. And if you say the sound right now, and think about where your tongue is, it's up high behind your upper teeth, and kind of it's not quite touching the alveolar ridge, but it's approximating or getting close to that alveolar ridge. So it's what we call an alveolar sound. So you can also utilize some of those strategies we talked about in the N and the T, D video to help get your child get their tongue up to that spot, with maybe giving a little tickle up there to give a little bit of sensory feedback. The other thing that you can do as a little speech hack to get your child to be able to say the sound, if your child is able to say the T sound, basically the S is just a really long, prolonged T. So what I do with my kids is I'll do this. So you start with the T because that gets the tongue in the position it needs to be in, and you get that a couple of times. And you can even say something like, okay, now make it long. Let me hear a long T. T, t, s. So that's a strategy you would use for a child that isn't able to just go ahead and imitate the S sound when you say s. Another thing that you could do if the hand cue is not enough for your child is you can take your hand on their arm, or you take their hand and place it on their arm, or you could take your finger on their arm and you go s. You can use one finger, you can use your whole hand. The whole idea is to give some tactile sensory feedback that s is a long sound. That's another strategy that you can try if your child can say the t sound but is having a hard time making it long. These are all just cues that help the brain trigger that long flow of exhalation for the s sound. So some other things I wanted to talk to you about is if your child cannot say the sound and all of these little tricks that I've just talked about aren't really working for your child, what you can do if it's in your child's ability to say the t sound, I would just go ahead and substitute the t sound for s in words. So let's say your child wants to say sock and they can't, or you want your child to ask for a sock or label a sock, but they can't say the sound yet. You would actually go ahead and prompt them to say talk. You want your talk? And if they can't say the k sound yet, you can even say ta. Oh, you want your ta? Have them say ta as an approximation for sock. But what you are going to do is you are going to model the whole word. You're going to prompt them to say ta or talk. And then you're going to say, yeah, here's your sock. Sock. Yeah. Ta. Sock. So they're getting exposure to what the ultimate target is that you want them to say, but you're giving them a way to say the word in a way that they can, that's within their current abilities. So what's great about that is this opens up a greater array of vocabulary and words that your child can now say. Because if your child can say the t sound, now we can prompt them to say words that have the sound in it as an approximation. Let me think of a word that has the snake sound at the end. So let's just say bus, which this is going to be really funny because now I'm going to say but. But if you prompt your child to say but instead of bus, that is a totally appropriate approximation. And when kids are typically developing their speech, that is an error, that is a developmentally appropriate error that occurs in kids typically developing speech. They will naturally say the t sound for the s, for the s sound. So by doing that, and not only that, but you're also training the child's tongue to be where it needs to be for eventually when they're able to say that longer sound. So let me give you some suggestions for activities that you can try to work on your snake sound. So like I said earlier, you might want to try working on, if your child is able to say s in isolation, rather than drilling CV syllables, which are consonant vowels. So using those first 6 vowels that I talked about all the way back in video 1 of the sound series. Normally, when we introduce a new sound, we would introduce it in CV syllables, consonant vowels. So with like the b syllable, it would be bow, boo, bee, bye, and bay. But with the sound, you might want to try it as a VC syllable first, which means that you're, instead of saying C, you might want to start by having your child say E, S, O, S, U, S, I, S, A, S. It might be easier for him or her to coordinate the vowel into the S first because it actually develops in the final position in typically developing speech first. If your child is just learning how to say the sound all by itself, then maybe you want to like play a little snake game. So you just like pretend you're a snake and go, I'm gonna get you, here's my snake. And especially if you tickle their arm and make it like a sensory experience, and then they can say the sound to request you to do the snake game. Or you could pretend that you touch something and it's really hot, like, ooh, that's hot. They're just like fun little ways to practice the sound in a playful way. Or if your child is actually really doing well with those early developing consonant sounds and they're starting to be able to pair a couple words together, you can use the word see. So that's how you would cue it. See or see. I actually prefer the arm movements because it's a bigger contrast, especially with this cue. But you could use the word see in a sentence. So I would actually write it out on a piece of paper, write I see with a blank line, and then you can put whatever, like maybe their label targets are that they're working on. Or you can make like a book of their favorite things. You take pictures of their favorite things and underneath it you write I see blank. And they can work on combining words together. And the word see is a great early word that they can practice saying with their new snake sound. So there you go. This sound was a very loaded sound for sure. I hope you found some useful tips within this video. Even if your child is able to say a lot of sounds, but just isn't saying their S sound properly, I hope you're able to find some good tips in this video as well. Please comment below and let me know what your favorite tips were. And if you are looking to really take a deep dive in working with my hand cue system and really rolling up your sleeves and helping your child to talk in your own home, enrollment is opening very soon for my program Nonverbal No More. And the best way to be in the know of details when enrollment opens is to get on my mailing list. So if you go to bit.ly/emailmeslp, that'll take you right to where you need to go to just with a click of the button, go ahead and get on my email list. And I would love to see you in there, and you'll get all the updates and you'll be in the know of everything that's happening in Mindshaper SLP world. So thank you again so much for joining me. And as we leave, I'm going to close it out with a little Paul Abdul. Maybe. Ah, there it is. I'm going to do my little snake dance. Remember this? It sounds like the snake. Go ahead and try. No, I'm not telling lies. It's the sound of the day. I'll teach you the rules. I'm talking about the S sound. Thanks, everyone.